Hey, everyone. How's it going?
Oh, not too bad.
Good. It's very nice to have you all here. Why don't we start out by everyone just giving a quick hello. I know I introduced you a moment ago, but let's just get a quick hello and see. Give me one interesting fact about yourselves. Sarah, can we start with you?
Sure. Hi, my name is Sarah. I apologize now. I got extremely sick this week and my voice is just in and out. An interesting fact about me. That's a hard one. I think maybe I live on a couple acres outside of Redmond, Washington, in the United States, with like a number of dogs and cats and chickens on a river, and just kind of living that dual life of, the joke of once I'm done being an engineer, I'm going to go start a farm, kind of starting it a little early.
Awesome. Well, very, very good to have you, Sarah. Wayne? How are you today, sir?
I'm good. Nice to meet everybody. More interesting, like I said, head of community at Convet, excited to be here today. One interesting fact about me is I am a avid motorcycle adventure rider, and I guess similar to Sarah, where it's like started early. It's like, okay, after being many years being in tech, like, yeah, I'm want to like just build a motorcycle out in nature and just travel. Yeah, that's the goal.
I love that. Getting away from the computer screen for a bit. All right, Marina, how's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
Good.
So I'm Rena, the DevRel manager at Tiny MCE. And one interesting fact about me, I don't know how I'm going to follow up beautiful farm outside of Redmond and motorcycle enthusiast, but I do love traveling and been to over 30 countries, and I'm looking to just travel more. So, yeah.
Sounds awesome. What's your favorite place that you visited?
Get this question a lot. I would say like I'm a scuba diver, so I love the Philippines. Beautiful waters, beautiful dive sites. Every dive site is so different from the next, and there's like one of these dives that you can do in Cebu, which is right next to these giant whales, the blue whales, and
amazing.
It's I've never done that kind of dive before. They like swim right next to you. It's beautiful.
That is awesome. All right. Well, enough shooting the breeze. Let's get down to business, y'all. Our first question from the audience: who can call themselves a DevRel?
That's a good question. I think about this a lot, actually. First of all, I think anyone can technically call themselves anything. And I'm not here to gatekeep at all. But I think it really depends on what you're trying to educate. And I say that because, my past, so I've got, I did grad school in computer science, but with a focus on education, where I tried to figure out how to best teach computer science to undergrads and to children and people of all ages. And then I've also been an engineering manager, and then also been an advocate who's teaching professional developers things, all the way from novice professional developers to folks who are more experienced. And I would say, for example, at Sentry, we create a tool that does error and performance monitoring. It can be fairly difficult to educate developers on a tool like that if you haven't built applications in the past, because it's a tool that requires something to be built and have, real users out in the wild. So a Hello World app doesn't really hit the points of the power of Sentry as much as it would at another company. When I was at Microsoft as an advocate, I was teaching some basic machine learning and AI using Python and Azure notebooks. And it was much easier to do a fairly simple Hello World to teach some of those concepts. So it really depends on, I think, what you're trying to teach. When I had the company and we were teaching children how to code, we actually hired educators, like people who were studying to be teachers, who had no experience with coding, to be the teachers, because it was much easier to teach them how to code than it was to teach someone how to teach. So it really depends on what the goal is of the teaching that you're doing, in my opinion. And then that's taking the DevRel term as a technical education definition,
Sure.
which it isn't always at other companies. It can be more of a marketing thing, or it could be more of a, you work with engineers to create scripts and demos, and then you are the presenter. So it really depends, I think.
Yeah, that is an interesting thought. Like, what does a DevRel for a kid look like? Like, yeah, that's that's interesting.
Yep. Yep.
All right, Wayne and Marina, would either of you like to weigh in on this question?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very, very interesting question. And I've kind of struggled with like what do people who can call themselves DevRel, and I like to talk in terms of threes. So I would say, anyone who's doing some sort of advocacy work, community management work, developer evangelists. There's kind of three different, and I think those are kind of three different functions of DevRel, if you really think about it. Advocates are people, as you mentioned, do the demos, they help with the documentation, but they also like help you connect to the bigger picture of what's the value add when you do something with the product. Then there's the community managers who really listen to the pain points and communicate them back to us to understand what are the pain points within the community, when developers are using your product, and what's working and what isn't. And I think evangelists for me are folks who spread the word on how products fit into sort of the broader tech landscapes. Are slightly different from advocates, but I think each of them are kind of the three different types of roles, I would say, that fit into developer advocacy, at least from my perspective.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Marina.
Yeah,
All right.
totally agree with Marina and Sarah. Just to add in, I believe, again, like I think Sarah said, it's like anyone can call themselves DevRel, but I also think about like what outcomes companies are trying to reach when they hire a DevRel. Is it just building developer relations? Is it just educating around product? Is it just trying to, like Marina was saying, trying to evangelize? So I think in terms of like calling yourself DevRel, it's like, okay, make sure that, if you're going to call yourself that, make sure that you are aligned on the outcomes that you want, no matter what you're trying to execute in a role.
Excellent. Yeah, excellent point. We should be about outcomes anyway, right? We should be. Awesome. All right. So our next question is, what are some common misconceptions you hear out there about DevRel? Anything that you've heard that before this goes like, I don't think they understand what we do.
That we're not engineers. Again, that may be true for some folks who are in DevRel, which is, again, might be totally fine. I'm not saying you have to have been, a full-time engineer prior to necessarily, but to make that assumption right away about what someone's qualifications are because of their title of DevRel, I think can be frustrating. So that's one of the ones that always hits hard for me. It can be very frustrating when someone is like, oh, that's surprising for someone in marketing. And it's like, first of all, marketing is not a bad thing, and it's not lesser. Second of all,
yeah.
I am an engineer, so I should know that. So that kind of misconception, I think, can sometimes hurt the message that advocates are trying to convey.
Absolutely. All right. Any other thoughts on this one? By the way, don't let me pressure you all to answer every time. Just throwing that out there, but I do want to give you the opportunity.
I think I want to sort of piggyback on that. I think not all DevRels necessarily are engineers. I agree with that. And there's also an aspect of sometimes some of the best, depending on the product they're working on, right? Some of the best DevRels that I have seen have come from non-engineering backgrounds. I'm an engineer myself, and I think for the work that I do, I definitely need to be extremely technical. But I remember, her name's kind of slipping my mind, but I think she used to work with Figma and kind of this Flutter and all of these different like design backgrounds, and she came from like an animation studio. This developer advocate I met at a conference, and she was incredible. The way she told the story, the way she presented to the audience, it captured me. I attended all of her sessions at that conference. She had a workshop, she had a talk, she had a panel. I went through, and it was not because she knew the technical aspects, but she knew how to tell a story. And I think that's another pretty big thing. It's like DevRel is also not necessarily have to come from an engineering background. That's another misconception. You do need that diversity in ideas and storytelling to be able to kind of sell to a developer audience as well.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to that. What is the outcome that you're seeking?
Right.
And what are you trying to evangelize or teach? And who is the best person to do that?
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah. I'll let add that the role of DevRel, I believe the misconception is that the role of DevRel has to be in a certain box in itself, right? Like, sometimes DevRel is marketing, sometimes DevRel is community, sometimes DevRel is product, sometimes it's connected to sales, customer success, right? The thing I believe is like, putting DevRel in a box is a wrong thing to do from the start with, because you start developing a certain type of outlook or pattern or assumptions that this is what DevRel is, this is what DevRel is going to accomplish, and every company, every product, every situation is unique. And then we start stereotyping, the role. Then we start like comparing, like, oh, this DevRel person did this DevRel person did that. But everybody has their own superpower, right? And every product, at certain stages is going to be ready to have that developer relations, go out and evangelize and bring in 1 million users or 100 users, depending on the product. And so it's like, if you put this idea that DevRel is going to accomplish this, and your product's not ready, it's not going to work. But if your product is, and your community and every other kind of pieces are aligned, and you have a person that does DevRel, you may have a different outcome. So putting DevRel in a box is a misconception. Something I don't think people should.
Yeah, that's like the misconception is the assumption, whatever the assumption is.
Yeah.
Love that. So yeah, it's all right there in the name, right? Developer relations, whatever can get you to have good relations with the developers, i.e. is really just like helping them out. That's the way you get good relationships, right? And so whether that's education or making sure they know about tools that's actually going to help them and things like that. I love it. All right. So next question on my list is, do I need to be an excellent coder before I pursue a career in DevRel? And I think we've talked about this a little already. It seems like the answer is no, but maybe let's tweak the question just a little bit. Is at least two of you, Wayne, did you say you had engineering background as well?
No, I am not a full stack engineer.
Okay.
But I am, I guess back in the day, some people would say indie hacker. You know what I mean? It's like, I built products. I've launched stuff on Product Hunt, and I have some apps, things, web apps out there that I built. So I wouldn't call myself an engineer. I wouldn't call myself a full stack developer.
Okay.
But the frame, I heard some people say, is like tech adjacent, but I understand.
I like that.
I've built stuff, and go ahead.
So this could be an interesting conversation. So from the two of you who are fairly heavy engineering, like, what benefit do you see that bringing to the DevRel position? And Wayne, do you see any, are there any times where you wish you could have a little bit more, developer experience that might help you out? So let's start with the first one of those. What do you see coding adding to this position?
I can take that. I think the biggest thing, I think there's two things there. The first thing is the ability to communicate with fellow engineers in the company. As I think Sarah was pointing out earlier, there is like this notion of, oh, you know this. Then once they realize that, there's a certain level of respect for you within the engineering org, where they want to help you. They know that, you're one of them, and they're open for conversations and things like that. So I think it really helps with having a buy-in within the engineering team. If you do come from an engineering background, because they know you speak their language, you understand tickets, you understand sprints, things like that. The second aspect of it is, alongside understanding sprints, you also understand, I think to a certain degree, like a product life cycle and how things are built, why things take time. It's, from a marketing and sales standpoint, you might be seeing a lot of requests for XYZ products, or, oh, it's just like an add-on, like, why isn't this being delivered? But you also have empathy for your own engineering team, right? As DevRel, I think that you do have to have empathy for your developers and users who use your product. But I think being an engineer creates empathy for your own developers within your org, and I think that's really valuable for me when I have just conversations and like building those relationships.
Yeah, I think similar to what Marina was just saying, but kind of from an external lens, it's having an understanding of what the challenges are of the people that you are, trying to educate or evangelize to. In particular, again, at Sentry, because the product is most useful for people who have an application that is being used by users, and not necessarily someone just learning how to code. Understanding like what, we're right now working on a lot of educational pieces around performance and tracing and being able to identify what the root cause of an issue is, maybe a slowdown on your website or something. And if we hadn't had experienced those in the past, we might not even really know where to start. Now, I will say on the flip side, if we were not necessarily as technical as we are, but really community focused, we could still get that information by being really actively engaged in the community, right? Mm-hmm. And listening and understanding. And maybe we would even like have content that isn't biased by our own experiences. So it's not to say that you have to have experienced that, because each individual person's not going to have experienced every single version of a challenge for developers. So it's not necessarily a requirement, but I think in our case in particular, it's useful to say, back when I was doing this, or I currently have this side project, or, whatever it is. And this is actually what is giving me the biggest headache. And I think in particular, we're lucky at Sentry because we get to focus less on the product and more on the actual challenges developers are facing. And then the product can be a piece of how to resolve that. So some of the posts that have come out recently are like 5 tips for optimizing your images on your website, right? Yes, Sentry plays a role there. It might help you identify which components are causing the slowdowns, or it might help you identify if you've created that fix and improved your site's performance. But the challenge that developers are facing isn't something necessarily that Sentry solves, right? It just gives you information about.
Gives you visibility, yeah.
Exactly. And so we're lucky in that we get to really focus more on what are those challenges that developers are facing. And I think having that experience, and then furthermore, being out in the community and listening and doing that I think can be beneficial. But again, to the flip side, could also potentially create bias.
Sure. And I totally feel that, because I'm an educator in the Vue space, right? And a lot of my content, and one course in particular comes to mind about common mistakes in Vue.js is the name of the course. Like, it's literally all drawing on my experience with stupid crap I've done that cause bugs, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, there is that kind of drawback of maybe sometimes you lean on that too much and aren't listening enough.
Yep.
Yeah. Interesting. All right, Wayne, do you have anything to add on the flip side of that? I mean, it definitely sounds like you've got some decent experience there, but yeah.
Yes. There are times where like I most definitely wish I was a full stack engineer. Like just most everywhere. But think about like my experience at Convex. I joined last December. We're a small startup. We're at around like 20, 25 employees, and we are full backend as a service platform, right? So we have full stack developers, setting up their, whether it's Vue or React or Next.js, like, using one of our client libraries, like, okay, boom, connect one of our client libraries to our API. So building apps, right? And I can help get people up and running. But when you start getting some of the super technical TypeScript type errors, I'm like, yeah, I need some help. And for example, we sponsored a few hackathons since my time, and there's my superpower, and then there's the developer superpower, right? Yeah. And it's like, often I'm doing some of the operations, I'm doing the programming, I'm doing some of the marketing, I'm doing some of the collecting product feedback, relaying that, and some developers, they can do it all. Some they don't want to do all that. They just want to code and debug. And so while I'm doing that, and then at the hackathon, say if someone comes up, I'm often paired with someone on the developer experience team. So for me, it's like it's great to have partners, allies, and organization that understand like my superpower and their superpower, right? And then it's a win-win for everybody. And so so particularly for developer relations, do you need to be an excellent coder? I would say no, but do you need to know, let's say enough, but do you need to know your product and your community and your potential customers? Do you need to understand their pain points and be able to maybe be like an air traffic controller where it's like, I may not be able to help you, but I know who and where and how to help you, right? And do a great job of communicating. And then if doing that, it's a win-win for everybody.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I like what you just said, Wayne. Like being able to understand what the question someone is actually asking and being able to know who to reach out to. Because even if you do have an engineering background, you're not going to know every answer to every question, right? Like, especially if a lot of your time is in DevRel is spent on kind of that outward facing, outreach or education. And so it is still important to be able to understand what someone is asking, know whether or not that's a question that you should just kind of field yourself. To Marina's point, like that's an unreasonable ask. I don't even need to bring this to the engineering team. I kind of know that. Or actually, that's really good feedback. We should bring this up. We should go talk to product. We should go talk to the engineers and see if we can, add that to the sprint or something. Or just like, I don't know the answer to this question, knowing who to ask, right? Like that, I think you need to be proficient enough, at least in kind of the language and the space for the tool or framework that you're evangelizing or advocating for.
Yeah, agreed. And being mindful of the shifts in expectations that we're in right now as a tech ecosystem and in developer experience, where community is where people are wanting things like that, right? We come across the social age real time. Now we're in the AI age, and people, they can ask ChatGPT, AI, just like that, and then they come, experience with a human. They often are expecting a response just like that, because now we're being reprogrammed by AI in our interactions and our behavior, in terms of like, you always supposed to know the answer, right? You always know the answer. And I think one of my fellow colleagues said this is about, at the end of the day, as humans, we still need to have empathy, right? Empathy in building, empathy in solving problems.
Yep. Awesome. All right, y'all. Yeah, it's hard as a developer sometimes when you're, working on the computer to think about the people behind the software. And we'd all be better off if we did that, I think. All right. So personally speaking, why did you pursue the DevRel path as opposed to a developer path? Or just in general, why did you choose to do it?
For me, I've had just such a wild journey in that, like, all my internships through school were developer internships. When I had my company, it was kind of a cross between creating the curriculum as well as the software that we built to teach kids. I was an engineering manager for a while, but ultimately what I absolutely love, the thing that brings me joy in my career and outside of it as well, is helping someone else achieve their goals. Like that is my favorite thing in the world. It's why I love being a mother. It's why I love being a teacher. It's why I love being a manager. It's why I love DevRel. It's like I have something that I can enable you to get to that next step. And I don't want to take credit for that next step at all. Like, it's not about that. It's just like watching other people kind of unlock their own superpowers or unlock their own ideas, or just kind of bring their ideas, to reality. Like, that to me that's what gives me energy across my entire life. So for me, that it was DevRel, right? It's yes, I guess you could technically do that with the tools that you build, but you don't get to see it as much, and you don't get to kind of celebrate with people as much. And yeah, I think for me, that's why. And I go back and forth, I still try to find time. Luckily, again, at Century, we need to have some level of still building. So I still get to kind of do that. But yeah, that piece in general is why teaching, managing, DevRel, parenting, those are my 4 favorite things in the world.
Right up your alley. Nice.
Yep.
Anybody else? Why did you get into DevRel? Want to weigh in, Marina?
Yeah, sure. So I think it was a very sort of natural transition for me. So I was a full stack developer at IBM Cloud, grew up to staff engineer, whatever. And at that point, the dev advocacy team at IBM was trying to go to conferences. So I knew if you're in IBM Cloud monitoring, you kind of touch all the pieces of IBM Cloud. So I was very much geared and ready to talk about any of the pieces, and tried my first stint at a conference because of that. I just volunteered and said, hey, I could do that talk for you. And then I realized that I enjoy more than just giving the talk. I enjoyed connecting with developers after. While giving the talk, so many questions for me about the product. And it was the first time people, I just assumed people understood a dashboard and you have to drag and drop. And, you don't have that interaction with customers as a developer or any of the end users. You kind of make a ticket, and even bug requests or bugs they come through ServiceNow or any other kind of support system, but you don't really interact with the end user. And that kind of end interaction at that conference made a big difference for me. Especially after my talk, I spent 15 minutes debugging someone's monitoring system, and then there's a moment at the end where they were like, oh, it all works, great, thank you so much. And I was like, oh, I helped you do something. I helped you achieve more. And I was very, very excited about that. And that kind of finally started giving me more purpose. I really enjoy development. I still have side projects that I work on, still play around with new technology that come in. And I'm definitely still a developer at heart. But that mission to sort of help people and tell a story really just, sparked an interest in me. And I realized this is kind of what I want to do. And I've been pursuing that sort of path, which, again, it's a developer relations path is not a linear path, as Sarah mentioned. It's very up and down. I've done different types of work in DevRel as well. And it's also ultimately what your company wants it to be. So there's this famous quote by Kelsey Hightower who says, DevRel is who pays you wants it to be. And, at IBM, it was a very empower customers. You're basically a pre-sales engineer, but you have this aspect of going to conferences and talking. At DigitalOcean, it was kind of developer relations adjacent with developer ecosystem. Go find partners. And then my path became now developer relations manager with TinyMCE, which is very much creating content and being present at conferences like these. So it really varies, and I just kind of enjoy that. It kind of keeps me on my toes, what's next with my role. So yeah, combination of a lot of things.
Very cool.
Yeah, I
Thank you.
would just to add on to that real quick. I also have ADHD, so the like constant squirrelness of DevRel is something I love.
Yeah, it's fun.
It is.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks for sharing that, Sarah. Yeah, 'cause that's real. That's real. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. For me, it's like over years I've honed in on my self-awareness of what I'm good at, and you start learning that, like what gives you energy, what are you, we talk about passion a lot, but it's like what gives you energy, what are you passionate about, how are you planning your career path, what stage of your life you're in, all those things kind of matter, right? Different points in terms of decision making. And early in my career, I was big in design, and then I got into web development. Then I was like, oh, I'm going to like get into business development and product, right? And then it's like, oh, my passion changed. The impact I want to have in tech in my own life and the world changed. Then I started doing more conferences and events and bring people together. That brought a certain amount of energy, and then my passion changed again, right? And it's like, you know what, did that. I want to get back to, bringing people together in a different way and working with developers and product. And also having a kind of like career and life foundation of like, what do you want to do? What industries you want to be in, right? And for me, it's always been tech. But then it's like, what kind of tech? It's like SaaS tech, web tech, building applications tech. And then that's where, like, for me, like Convex just aligns with all those, right? Because we're empowering developers to build apps, and I love seeing like people build new things, seeing innovation, things, seeing innovation happen in different areas, and bringing people together. And so all those things for me kind of fit in terms of like, oh, why I'm at Convex as head of community, and I would encourage individuals to kind of look at their passions, their goals, but also in today's time, being mindful of the job market that we in tech. Right. I wake up every day like people, how you doing? I'm good and grateful. Right. Yes. We're being real, like, the tech industry is taking a hit, and a lot of people look for work these days. And so it's like, you want to pursue a path and develop and DevRel versus a developer path. Look at, depending on where you are in your journey, it's like, look at where you want to be in the next 6 months, next 3 to 5 years, and what role could be easier to get in, or what role you could advocate, you could build something that where you can pursue maybe a path to entrepreneurship, or that you can tell a story to help you a career path down the road.
I think that's a really excellent point. I mean, we need to balance like our passions with realistic opportunity, right? There's a good balance to have there. Very interesting, Wayne. All right. Anybody else have anything else to add on this one? We will move right along then. Okay. So next question here, I think pivots quite nicely off of what Wayne just said. How do you see the DevRel landscape actually evolving in the next few years? And what new skills or areas of focus do you think will be most important?
I think about this a lot. Go ahead.
Are you sure?
Yeah, go.
I mean, I just feel like, so I think there's a few things, right? But the biggest thing is AI is really going to hit how content is created. One of the biggest things for me currently at DevRel is creating content. And not to say that AI is going to be a replacement, but those, I think, who use AI well may have a chance to just be more efficient in their roles. With that said, the sole reliance on AI can also be pretty bad because you won't understand the tech well. So I really hope a lot of developers take away that just plugging something into ChatGPT, and maybe it's a replacement to search the docs, if it already has the docs in it. But if not, just go to the actual docs of the product. It's a lot helpful for you to do that. But yes, I think there's going to be a component of you need to figure out how you can enable folks to who are already using AI to continue to use it, and also just in content creation, how are you going to change it? The other thing is consumption of content. A lot of people these days are using shorter forms of content. Of course, we've seen the wave to video, but I think it's gone from long form videos to short form videos to now shorts. Right? Shorts, Reels, and TikToks. Like, believe it or not, there are courses on React, Vue, and Angular that are on TikTok. And it amazes me that, and they have 500,000 subscribers to that account. And these are actual developers learning in sort of short form. So I think we would also have to evolve to how our audience is consuming. So if you work in a company where a lot of the developers are learners, then we're going to have to adapt content to how the world is going to be in the next 3 to 4 years or 5 years. And I think finally, the skills and areas of focus is just kind of being true to, I think it was Wayne who said it, like finding what your superpower is and really being true to that. That's something I don't think AI or anything else can replace, right? And then just kind of speaking that very loudly to developers to talk to them. So I think those are the 3 things in how I see the DevRel landscape really evolving.
Marina, can I ask a kind of related question here? And could you name like one very practical way that you have used, let's say, ChatGPT in your role right now? Like, can you think of an example of one way you've used it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the best way I've used ChatGPT has been in 2 things. One, when I'm writing or responding to an email, and if it's in a slightly more harsh tone than I would like it, then putting it into ChatGPT, or whatever company authorized AI model we have,
Right.
and saying. And of course, make sure you strip all the content out of it that are proprietary. I'm going to say that. But just asking it to change the tone, that's really helpful for me. The second way that I've done it is sometimes scripting videos. I need a little bit more to say and fill in the time, because sometimes it's like, create a 5-minute video on this. And yes, I can do that, but there's sometimes not enough content. And one thing I think ChatGPT is good at more than me is rambling. So if you want filler words, jokes aside, I think ChatGPT can be a good assistant to your day-to-day work, whether it's scripting, brainstorming. I still don't believe in writing blog posts or writing content purely from it. I'm very skeptical about it. I think we just watched that documentation presentation earlier. I think it was Sarah's presentation, and she made a great point. Like, you don't want to ramble in documentation or how-to blogs, right? You want to get to the point for developers, and you want to make it sure it's accessible. So just be careful of that when you're using ChatGPT, because I really do think it adds a lot of unnecessary words and sentences that you don't need. But if that's what you do need, it's pretty helpful.
I'm not going to go off topic. Let's stay on topic. I was going to completely take us off the rails. Does anybody else want to answer this question?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest challenges with humans is we like to apply labels. And that's because we are not computers. So we can't process large amounts of information and data all at once. And so it's much easier to label things and group things in a way that helps us better understand the world. And so I think DevRel is a complicated label, as we've been talking about for the last, 30 minutes or so. And what I hope to see in terms of the evolution of DevRel is kind of that very first question, which is reducing the assumptions of what you're getting or meeting someone who identifies as DevRel, right? I think that we as an industry need to evolve the way that we're creating content, the way that we are writing docs, the way that we are creating even our APIs or SDKs, right? Like, we need to understand kind of how the world is evolving and therefore evolve our practices. But again, it really just kind of depends on what is your ultimate outcome, what is your ultimate goal. And what I hope is that we just continue to kind of match goals with what the industry needs and what is currently available. And so I don't think there's necessarily one specific way that DevRel is evolving. I think it's more kind of separating and recognizing each of the individual superpowers, to credit Wayne, and recognizing that the business might need this today, but might need this tomorrow, and that shift might be an internal shift because of the way that the business is going. It might be, excuse me, a shift, like a more external shift because of the way that AI is being helpful. So yeah, I think it's a very difficult question to answer, because my dream answer would be that we don't just all go under the term DevRel, like that, under that umbrella, but that's not realistic, because humans are just bad at large amounts of data. So I hope it's, rather than kind of trying to have everyone have a different title, which I don't think is necessarily helpful, I hope the evolution is actually not within DevRel, but by the folks who are looking at DevRel and recognizing that, you shouldn't go to a DevRel advocate who is primarily community-based and expect them to be able to quickly, ramp up a demo and a technical presentation and write a technical blog post if that's not what their role is. And so, yeah, I think that's a non-answer for you.
Excellent. Yeah. Love the part, Sarah, about humans not be able to answer, like, no, we're not robots. Yeah. But we're now using AI, which is actually, as a society, reprogram us to think like robots, or engage with others, engage more frequently with essentially like a robot type framework. So yeah, it's interesting where we're going to be at next 3 to 5 years.
But at least we don't just make up answers out of thin air when we don't know, right?
I've yet to see like ChatGPT. Like, I don't know. I've been told I can't answer that because of some reason. But not say I don't know. But no, it's interesting. Like, I was when the question first asked, I started writing down some thoughts, and then I kind of reframe my answers. Like, where we going? It's like Marina was saying, like, content creating has really impact this role a lot, like in terms of like video, short story, like everything you said, Marina. And it's just going to keep. People are just going to demand more. And I say, talking about skills and areas to focus on is unfortunate, because also I don't like us as humans getting into the like solely like robotic output type. Got to be creating. But if I look at where we're going with the tools, whether it's AI enabled or not, the expectations are like, how much output can we deliver? So it's like, how fast can you create a tutorial? How fast you can create, update your docs? How fast you can create a video or podcast or material or so forth? So it's like the content creation speed time and expectations from others is going to change. Is already changing in developer relations and in community as well. And then like the ability like to ask good questions and is a skill. Like we talk about like prompt engineering and so forth, right? But asking the right questions often can get you a long way and can help, whether it's the AI or help other humans understand who you are, how you think, or help someone solve a problem. So I think like really developing those skills of like asking good questions to get to whatever, to the outcome you want. And just, just unfortunately going back to speed, that's just going to impact everything we're doing these days.
Yeah,
What I
absolutely.
hope to those points is that the way that I use AI and the way that, like, for example, we released a GitHub Copilot extension, Sentry did. And what I like about that extension and what I like about the way I use AI is it's exactly what kind of you just said, Wayne, and something that I think is irreplaceable and is a very critical skill with DevRel, which is kind of knowing what your goal is and knowing what questions to ask to be able to reach that goal. And to the speed portion, it's like not necessarily, for me at least, it doesn't necessarily help me execute faster. What it helps me do though is get like remain focused on my superpower, my skills, my goals. It allows me to stay focused there. And so, for example, with our Copilot extension, basically, if there's an issue in Sentry, you can just go into the chat inside of VS Code and say, hey, Copilot, what can you summarize this issue for me in Sentry and help me find where the likely cause is? That is a bunch of, like, that is an exercise that as an engineer isn't actually that useful. It is useful to understand what the issue is, and it's useful to know your code base, but the actual like searching through things doesn't necessarily add a ton of value. And so having the AI help you just focus so that you can remain in your code base, in VS Code, in your editor, remain focused on kind of the goal of resolving the issue and not necessarily what the details of it are, I think is powerful. And similarly to what Myrna was saying, in terms of my content creation, it might be that I want to know, of this blog post, what does the AI think are the biggest points? That doesn't necessarily mean that I agree, maybe, but it might mean that maybe there's a missing, focus of this piece of content, or maybe there is a gap that an additional piece of content might be able to create, or maybe, it might just help me identify what is the short that I should create on this, right? Or what are the 5 shorts, because these are the 5 main points. And yes, that is something that I will still participate in. But like, I am, my superpower is more in creating that narrative and being able to deliver that piece of content versus just kind of like outlining, right? Like that is something I can do, but it's not necessarily something that I as a human am best at doing. A computer is actually best at that. So what I see, I actually wrote a blog post, but it's on a website that's not deployed yet, which is super helpful. But after like what I see AI doing in this evolution is allowing humans to get back to what humans are good at, which is what Wayne said, like asking the questions, whether it's of AI or of humans or whatever, or what Marina said, like actually creating the content. And I agree, it's not a blog post written by AI, isn't it? So it allows us to use computers more fully, which therefore allows us the freedom of being more human and enabling those human superpowers more fully. So hopefully that's kind of the evolution as well, in respect to AI.
I like that idea of it allowing us to be more human.
Yeah.
We all need a dose of that.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. So next question. Can I be a freelance DevRel, or do you have to be associated with a company?
Oh, yeah. We're seeing such a huge insurgence of freelance DevRel. I think it is a very, very, very powerful role. I think that for me, DevRel is being a trusted voice. whether that's a trusted voice within a company or a trusted voice within a particular area of the industry, I don't think it necessarily matters. It's mostly personal preference. And if you are a trusted voice, like in the industry, then if you partner with companies to create content that is authentic, then to me, that is the most powerful piece of content. Of course, anything I create as a Sentry employee is going to have Sentry in a good light, right? Of course it will. But hopefully, if you are a trusted voice, it means that you are not someone who just says whatever the highest bidder asked you to say. Otherwise, you wouldn't be a trusted voice. I believe that to be true. And so even if you are being paid to create content, you're not being paid to say something. You're being paid to evaluate something and then authentically represent it to your community. And I think that is very powerful. And I am excited to see this is I'm almost sad because when I was an advocate at Microsoft, me and a couple of my friends, Cecil Phillips and Brian Clark, we were all like, oh my gosh, we should just create our own like agency and be DevRel for hire. This was before this DevRel for hire really started. And unfortunately, we weren't in the life space to be able to do that. But now I'm seeing it. And I'm so excited because I feel like that is, as long as we remain true to that authenticity, and as long as the folks who are doing that more freelance are remaining true to their community and their voices, and as long as companies are not expecting them to just read off of a script that they write and instead just evaluate and authentically represent, I think that is honestly significantly more powerful. We just had a blog post from Dan, who's one of the co-hosts of the Morning Maker show, and we wanted he tried Sentry, did a Twitter thread on it. We reached out to him because we were like, oh my God, this is so cool. You tried it. We it wasn't an ask from us at all. And it was a very authentic, good representation of what we do. And so we asked if he wanted to partner with us on some content. We didn't tell him what to write. We didn't tell him anything. And the blog post that he published on our blog as a guest poster yesterday, it was like better than anything we could have ever commissioned. Better than like we could have never written that and just asked him to put his name on it. And it looks like we asked him to write it, right? It looks like we wrote it and said, can we put your name on it? Because it is such a positive kind of review of the product and of the shift in the industry that we're trying to encourage. But hopefully people know that is his true authentic voice, and his community in particular will recognize that, because it was just, it would not hit as well if that was something I wrote, right? Because I work for Sentry, so of course it's something I would write. So I'm really excited about that. And I think there will obviously be some people who don't kind of remain authentic, but for the most part, I think humans can tell, and they would lose their community if they don't remain authentic. So
totally agree.
Yeah. Did you want to go to a next question, or?
No, go ahead, Maria.
Yeah, so I think I agree with Sarah completely. Like, I think you can be a freelance DevRel. So there is a thing where you, as a DevRel, are, you're representing a community, a brand, a technology, whatever it is you are representing, right, at the end of the day. And I think to a certain degree, you can be a freelance DevRel. Now, do you need to be associated to a company or brand? I don't believe so, because I've seen some of the most successful educators and content creators out there. One of my very good coworkers, as well, coworkers as in like someone I work with outside of my company, Justin Mitchell, he's does work for Coding for Entrepreneurs. He's very true to his content. He codes and does content that will empower entrepreneurs. And that can be in whatever technology it is, whatever cloud platform it is. But he's very true to the content he does and make sure that it's useful to his users. So I would consider him a very great person in the DevRel space. So like that, I've seen, folks on Twitter who've picked a topic and they're really good at it, like CSS or Tailwind CSS, even specifically, and they talk about it every single day consistently, right? So there's one aspect which I agree with Sarah, which is authenticity, and then the other aspect is being consistent with your audience. Are you, you don't necessarily have to make these giant posts, but are you interacting with them consistently? If you tell them you're going to be on Twitter, are you showing up on Twitter for them? Whether it's as part of your brand, company, or even as a freelancer, are you engaging with them? So yes, you can be a freelancer, and you don't need to be associated with a company or brand as long as you really know what your strengths are and you're able to be consistent in delivering.
It's like the brand is you.
Yeah, it's your personal brand.
Yeah.
I follow a guy on Twitter. His name is Aaron Francis. Does anyone know this? Yeah. Like he was at Planet Scale, I believe it was, and he was let go, and he made he made a video. He's like, I was let go. Now what? And essentially he's like, okay, I'm going to be a freelance DevRel, and I'm going to, I'm going to make videos teaching people Laravel and SQL and things like that. But I'm also going to put myself out there and say, hey, if you're a company and you need help promoting your brand or teaching your software, call me. And I think it's a perfect example of this.
Yeah,
for sure.
No, absolutely. That's a great example.
Yeah.
All right.
I would just one point on that is Down's as freelancers, just be mindful of like the operationalize of your business, of being a freelancer. It's like, like you are everything. You basically your own CEO at that point. And so it's like, can you be freelancer? Yes. But be mindful of all the other responsibilities you have of whether it's like taxes, marketing, accounting, all of that. Be ready for it. So it's like, think about the pros and cons, and so then set it so you can set yourself up for success, right? Because everything Sarah and Marina said is 100% correct, and and I have a colleague who's a good friend of mine, and Ajana Vakil, who's been in DevRel space for years, and who does some freelance work. And one thing I learned from Ajana is that Ajana can do project-based developer experience work. And everything is not always outward facing, right? And that goes back to one of the questions earlier is about, the misconceptions, right? And some misconceptions is that it's always outward facing. It could be project-based developer relations type work, and therefore that's just another way to look at the role.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Wayne. All right. I think we are ready for the next question here. So how can an inspiring DevRel leverage social media to build a strong personal brand that attracts potential employers?
So I want to take that question because I know the job market is tough, and I know sometimes everyone's looking for a job, and that is definitely an important aspect of it. But it goes back to the previous point that even Sarah was making. It's when you're on social media, you need to be authentic, right? If you're sharing something, if you're creating something, it should not only be clickbait, in my opinion. It should really be like you as a developer relations person want to empower this other developer to learn something from your post, or you don't want them to fall into the same trap of bugs or some kind of like caveat when they were doing a blog or reading through the docs or creating a blog for that. And I think a huge aspect is if you're on social media and you want to build a strong personal brand, I think just be authentic. pick a few technologies that you're really good at and focus on them, right? It's very easy, I think, for a lot of developers, and these days, like AI is the new big thing, and maybe you're working on JavaScript and front end frameworks, and you kind of skip over and say, now I'm going to talk all Gen AI, and I'm not going to, talk to my audience about what I'm actually working on. And that will confuse the people who are currently following you, and be like, okay, they were talking about this and then they're moving over to this, but I don't know why. So when you do a strong personal brand, you have to remember who's your audience. Why are you doing what you're doing if you don't have a potential employer? And if you do have if you are employed and you want to switch into DevRel, then again, what is this technology or stack or community that you want to talk to and interact with, right? Start interacting with other influencers in that community, learn from them. And when I say influencers, it's not retweeting their posts, but also just engage with their posts, right? If you have questions about an opinion they made on Vue.js or Vite or React, like engage with them and ask them why they made that. And most times people with opinions on Twitter or on LinkedIn are going to respond to you because they really want to kind of have that debate. And that kind of is what makes you have that strong personal brand, is if you're able to engage with the community very authentically. And then in terms of employment, I just feel like it's tough these days. I'm not going to lie. I've seen some stellar dev advocates being let go from some really great companies, tech giants even. So it's hard out there, and strong personal brand helps, but also make sure you know your technology and your strengths, because to that employer during the interview, you probably need to sell yourself in the sense that you need to tell them how you're going to help them achieve their goals. And what your strengths and skills are. So make sure you're honing on those strengths and skills. It's not just about the personal brand for DevRel. It's also, do you know how to, if I told you to set up a demo app, can you do that? If I asked you to be on a customer call to help sales, can you do that? If you need to fix a sales enablement demo, can you do that? So make sure your skills are strong at the same time.
Great.
Yeah, I want to kind of reiterate everything we said for the last however long, 30, hour, because I think it kind of just goes back to that is one aspect of DevRel, and not necessarily every company or every role at every company needs to have that. So if that is something that you are interested in, and that is that kind of external, outward, social media based community, growing persona is something you want to do, I think everything Marina just said is completely accurate. It's know what your goal is and be authentic and true and focused on that. Sure. But also, I just wanted to caveat it with, you don't have to have a huge following on social media to be in DevRel. It can help. I want to echo what Marina just said about it being difficult and in terms of employment right now. But each company is going to be looking for something different. And sometimes docs are under DevRel, and having a huge portfolio of the docs that you've done and having numbers to show that like your docs are something that is useful to developers or things like that, that can be significantly more important than having any social media profile at all, right? So it really depends on kind of before, like, again, DevRel is such a huge term. I think before you just kind of try to be good at social media, really think about what you want to do day to day. If it does involve that external facing social media engagement, then yes, try to hone in on that. But recognize kind of what does, and I think Wayne said this too, right? Like what is your goal? What do you want to be doing? Where do you want to spend your energy? What is your superpower? What do you want to improve on in your career, in your life? What skills do you want to develop? And then identify kind of what are the best ways to demonstrate those. And then that, I think, makes, if you start your social media kind of with that lens, then you're going to find the community that also wants to receive that information, right? And then that's how you kind of grow your authentic community. And that's what I think we look for when we're looking to hire someone, if we are looking at social media as a piece of that. But then one slight other caveat is, like at Century, we have a very specific clause on our Notion doc that I don't know that anyone else notices, but we put it there specifically, which says our personal social media is our personal social media. Of course, we work for the company. Of course, we want to see the company succeed. Of course, we want to share that out. But if something doesn't match what we tend to talk about on social media, we might not retweet it or share it or talk about it too much, because that's not authentic, right? You build your community based off of you, or whatever brand like you are personally wanting to invest in. So yeah.
Awesome. Wayne, anything you'd like to add, sir?
It's a great with the panelists, my fellow panelists, and Sarah and Marina. Like they you two are awesome, and great points. The only thing is with social media is, and the whole brand building, that can be really draining. Let's be mindful of that. It can be really, really draining in today's time, because we have more. We have more of everything. Like, 2006, we had Twitter. Before that, we had Facebook. Now we have TikTok, Instagram, you name it. And, we don't call Discord and Slack communities and all the other third-party communities social media, but it's social media like, right? And then people are building their own platform. So we have more. So when someone says leverage social media to build a brand, it's kind of triggered for me, because I've been, so many gray hairs are showing. I've been around for a minute. Because it's so. But in a day, to get for someone who does want to do that, I think about the combination of what you want to accomplish in different ways. What you want to accomplish and then who you're trying to accomplish with. So it's developers, and then you're trying to, like, say, attract an employer, right? So I think about, and then you add social media to the mix. It's like partnerships. How are you leveraging social media to get partnerships to help build your personal brand, right? It's difficult to do anything alone. It's very difficult, right? And in the beginning, it may be someone that you follow on Twitter, or someone, on LinkedIn. Then you can next go to, like, oh, you're a guest on someone's podcast. And then from there, you write your guest blog posts, like Sarah was saying. And like all those things are mechanisms to help build your brand up, but also establish partnerships, which could lead to a potential employer. So that you may do social media once a week, but you are developing a new partnership opportunity also every other week. And then just think about, like, the stages of what could happen to attract a different employer. And then I feel like there's a common theme we've been talking about is also just like teaching.
Yeah.
Like why? And I think, like, if we look at like AI and ChatGPT, like, why did it take off so much? Just because we're asking questions and it's teaching us something, or we're asking questions and it's removing a lot of existing friction on how we've been doing things with Google search, where, all the other platforms we have around that collect information. It removed the friction and gave us simple answers. So if you're going to use social media and DevRel to attract employer, how are you teaching individuals and then becoming like a knowledge base where people like, I learned for that person. And then once you build that up as your brand, other people want to establish partnerships. They want to work with you. So I would think about doing it, approaching it that way.
I want to just quickly echo the social media adjacent. GitHub, Reddit, Stack Overflow. These are also like when we were looking for a new advocate on our team, we asked for, where do you have your community? And it doesn't have to be on the more traditional social media platforms. If someone was really, really well respected and active on Stack Overflow, that matters, right? I mean, depending on what their content is. But like, if their content is educational based and community based, like, yeah, that matters. And someone who's got a lot of, sample repositories on GitHub or is actively participating in open source repositories and moving projects forward, like, that matters. So it doesn't have to look a certain way. You don't have to just be a TikTok star to be on, well recognized in social media, in my opinion.
Agreed.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all so very much for your time today. I honestly wish I could just go grab another cup of coffee and like keep going with this. I'm loving this conversation. Unfortunately, our time is up though. So we thank you all so very much for joining us. Sarah, Marina, Wayne, your expertise has been super helpful.
Thank
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Yes, take care.